choked it. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Like just gone. Instantly. There's probably almost 4 pounds of that.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another weekly fishing report here on the Full Fishing YouTube channel. Got some exciting news to report. I'm not out fishing this week because my wife and I have welcomed a new little baby into our family this week, which was awesome. We didn't find out what the gender was, and it came out, it was a little girl. So I am now outnumbered 3-1 in my house with girls to me. But, and it's all good. Being a girl dad is really fun. But anyways, before our little baby came, I did get out and get fishing a couple times last week. And I want to kind of talk about what was happening on the lakes. And then even dive into like what rods and techniques I was using to catch some fish. So first off, got to an inland lake twice last week, and I got out on Erie one time. Put some fish in the boat, got my first almost 5-pound largemouth and also almost a 5-pound smallmouth. So it's a good start. The water temp jumped rapidly from low 40s to a surface temp of low to mid 50s on a lot of these lakes, and it put the fish in a really big funk, especially with it being like 75 degrees out here in Western New York. And then coming from like mid 40s to 70, sunny, no wind. I personally in the spring think the worse weather you have, the better the bite is. The sun kind of makes the fish sunbathe and get ready to lay their eggs. And I mean, I did hear about some fish actually spawning already on some of the smaller lakes, which April, it's not uncommon, but for it to go from 43 degrees to mid 50s in literally 2 days, it does happen. It's just crazy how it progressed. But I do have some friends out on the water this week as we speak. I'm recording it is Thursday morning here in Western New York, April 20th. So, and they're catching some really big pre-spawn fish. So I think that first wave that came up to move into the pre-spawn pattern kind of went real dirt shallow. And I'm going to get into one of my big largemouth catches this week and how I caught it and where I found it. But, and the smallmouth, they went from being really on, even though the lake was muddy, to not biting at all because I think that first wave really just flooded the bank because it got so warm. And then literally the next day I couldn't get out, and I had buddies just absolutely blasting them. So I missed the prime bite by literally 8 hours, 12 hours. But that's all good. So first let's get into the largemouth fishing I did last week, and I hit up a small lake here in Western New York, and 3 baits played big time for me, and didn't catch a lot of fish, but it's what I was trying to do in the spring, typical spring pattern, throwing a jerk bait. And right now on here, it's my smallmouth rod as well for throwing a blade, but I was throwing it on the Alpha Angler Slasher, and I have 2 reels. This is a Daiwa 8-1, SV 103 Tatula, and then also over there I have a Corrado MGL, both left-handed, both 8-1, 10-pound test, using any full-bodied jerkbait, so something maybe along the mat lines or bluegill, trying to imitate what the bait fish are that the fish are eating. The next big bait for us on that inland lake was a football jig. And the rod that I threw the football jig on is an Alpha Angler Clutch. It's almost a 7.5 foot rod, 15-pound test. This is a Beast Coast football jig, not the open water. I'm forgetting the name of it, but it was a black jig with, summer craw jig trailer on there. And I really think the contrast of this jig is what allows you to get a lot of bites. And that's got 15-pound test on the reel. Just an absolute workhorse of a rod for me. I love the Clutch for finesse football jigs, and it allows you to get a lot of bites. Then the third one was just a single swim bait, always a huge player this time of year, especially on the inland lakes. Next time I'm able to get out, I'm going to look for a square bill bite, like a flat-sided crankbait bite, maybe even a trap bite. But the biggest bass I got, and I don't have the rod down here with me, it's in my boat. Actually, yeah, it's in my boat currently. It was my Alpha Angler Chatterbound rod throwing a 1/2 ounce green pumpkin jackhammer with a green pumpkin, black and blue. I can't remember. I think it's like bruise shad or something. A Zacco on the back of it. And the big largemouth I caught last week was on a day where there was no wind, but I found a log that was cut out underneath, so you had a little bit of a ditch running back into a creek that was super shallow. Then there was one log that came out, and there was a ditch underneath the log, and I could see like 4 or 5 really big largemouth underneath this log, basically just sunbathing, and threw my jackhammer up in there, which is a risky proposition with the trees. I literally, as soon as I hit the water, I watched one come out and eat it. Super exciting. Really good fish. If you tuned over to my social media pages, you'll see that I have posted that big largemouth and how deep he got that jackhammer. But let's fast forward now to Lake Erie, my home water, the water that I guide on. I'm a captain, U.S. Coast Guard certified. And I was going out just trying to find some pre-spawn fish. And I found 3 baits actually, were really key for me on the big lake. And I already mentioned one of them. That was a gold Binsky 1/2 ounce blade bait with 10-pound fluorocarbon, my left-handed reels. It's the only time I really use left-handed reels is for blade baiting, jerk baiting, and topwater fishing. 10-pound fluorocarbon, and I was using the Alpha Angler Slasher. This rod is very multi-versatile. It's a great jerkbait rod, but I've also found with treble hooks and a blade bait, it keeps fish pinned really well. And what I was looking for was deep water, but transition areas where they're coming from the wintering hole up to areas for them to actively feed. And that could have been like a mud bottom into a steep rock cliff. And that's where I was getting them to go on the blade bait using forward-facing sonar. The next big technique that was going on out in the big lake was just dragging a swim bait, not really looking for them, just dragging it along, trying to get them to fire. Got a couple on the little swim bait here. This is, I believe, the Dirty Jigs swim bait head, super stout hook. Caught a couple fish on it, mostly on inland lakes, but nothing too crazy to write home about. A couple 2-pounders on Lake Erie. I was using so I could cast super far a Tatula 4000 size with some Cast X12 braid. If you're not familiar with the Cast braid, is a 12 carrier braid. It's designed to be saltwater braid, but it's a 12-pound test, a true 12-pound test. So its actual line diameter is about 1 to 2 pounds. You can cast a swim bait super far. It's super slick. It's super sensitive, so you can feel that swim bait hopping over every rock as it crawls on the bottom, trying to get a bite. Then we had 2 other baits. One of them is in the boat tied up. I haven't had my boat cover off since the baby got home, but I did have some rods in the basement. Was a tube jig. This one actually I have, is a tube jig. And anything with green pumpkin, purple, and gold in it is always like one of my favorite colors to use for smallmouth, especially early on in the year. The biggest tip that I can give you though with tube jig fishing is using some scent to slide the big wide lead head up inside of it. Using another 4,000 size Tatula reel to 10-pound Tatsu fluorocarbon. On the swim bait, I was using 8-pound Tatsu. And on the Ned rig, which I'm going to get to next, it's using actually 6-pound Tatsu. But the tube jig I found was really effective in like the 12 to 18 foot of water range. And I was picking them off using Mega Lot. So if I saw a steep drop or a big boulder and I could see the fish around it, I would just pitch it in front of the boat like 20, 25 feet away and just sit there and almost snap a tube, but keeping it steady on slack line. And you can watch the smallmouth on Mega Live nose down, and then you just feel the ever so slightest tick. Now with a tube jig, what I do recommend doing with any spinning rod outfit is one, running straight fluorocarbon, which I was not because I have a couple reels in the shop getting maintenance on them. That one of them is my fluorocarbon reel just for tube jig fishing. But having that drag actually tighten down pretty stoutly, so when you pop them real quick, that hook actually drives home really well. That I would be using my Super Wrench Alpha Angler rod, which is a 7'4", which is also in the boat currently, with a 10-pound fluorocarbon, or even 8-pound if you're feeling risky. But 10-pound I found is a really good spot for tube jigs with smallmouth. Now last, I'll take the same rod here with the Ned rig setup. I custom pour all my own Ned heads. I like really heavy ones with a screw lock. And I was using a white Ned bait because the water was stained off color in about 42 to 48 foot of water. And there's going to be a video coming out with me catching a bunch of 2 to 3.5 pound fish. I didn't run the camera the entire time. I think I caught 30 fish in like 4 hours of being out there, with only 2 of them being over 4 pounds. And one of those 4-pounders came on the blade bait. But Alpha Angler spy bait rod is turned into my absolute favorite rod to use for just about any finesse technique besides the tube jig. And you're just the same area with the Ned rig. You're looking for those winter hole transitions where the fish are coming up into the pre-spawn, which is still super deep water, to feed before they flood the shallows to spawn. So I hope everybody enjoyed this week's fishing report here on the Full Fishing page. Leave a comment down below if you've been out smallmouth fishing or largemouth fishing, what your favorite species to target is. Maybe if you've never used an Alpha Angler rod, let me know which one you would like to try, and I can kind of talk you through that. As always, my social media messages are always open for you to flood them. Send me messages. I love responding to everyone who tunes into the page, who tunes into the Lure Lab over on the Serious Angler Network, and also just the Serious Angler podcast in general. We love all of the engagement, all the comments, all the messages. You guys rock. And also, I'm going to give everyone an opportunity here as well. If you tag my personal page, Full of Fishing Guide Service, on Instagram, I'll make sure that I help spread the word about your page as well and share your stories and everything. So for now, please hit that subscribe button, and we will see you all next time.